Welcome to Whispers from the Grove, where we listen for what time and the forest have always known. Come sit with us.
Okay, let's unpack this. We are looking at a stack of notes and research today, centered around a piece titled The Keepers and the Sentinel, A Legacy of Stewardship. And I have to be honest with you, right out of the gate, when I first saw that title, I was 100% convinced we were about to dive into a fantasy novel.
I can totally see that. It definitely has a sword in the stone vibe to it.
Right. I was ready for dragons, maybe a mystical fortress, definitely some guy in a cloak standing on a mountain. It sounds like high-stakes, world-saving stuff.
And in a funny way, it actually is world-saving, just, not in the armies clashing sense. It's a much quieter, slower, a more grounded kind of heroism.
So for everyone listening, let's clear up that misconception immediately. We are not talking about mythical warriors today. We're talking about regular people.
Exactly.
The keepers in this material are humans, farmers, parents, neighbors, and the Sentinel, that's not a fortress, it's a tree.
Yeah.
Or sometimes the land itself.
It's a metaphor, but it's also a literal description. The Sentinel is the silent witness, the ancient tree, or the specific patch of landscape that has stood there for centuries. And the keepers are the people who simply pay attention to it.
And that's the mission of this deep dive. We aren't here to give you a botany lesson. I don't really care about phloem and xylem today. We are exploring this specific, really nuanced relationship.
The true humanity in nature, yeah, as it's described in these sources.
And it's all about a concept they call stewardship without ego.
Which is a phrase that just stops you in your tracks if you really think about it.
It really does. It's about how you maintain a quiet legacy of attention. But before we get too philosophical, let's ground this. Who are these keepers?
Right.
Because the material makes a point that they are not heroes in the big dramatic sense. They aren't holding press conferences.
No, and that's the crucial distinction. We are conditioned, especially now, to think of stewardship or environmentalism as these grand sweeping movements, signing global treaties, chaining yourself to a bulldozer.
Or inventing a plastic-eating bacteria.
Right, and those things are important. But this material is zooming way, way in. It argues that the keepers are farmers, they're storytellers, they're grandparents.
It's the everyday nature of it that strikes me. It says these are ordinary people who make a very specific decision. They decide that the land matters, the old tree matters, and the connection between them is worth tending. But isn't that just, garden or landscaping?
It connects to those things, but keeping is more of a psychological state, not just a physical one. A landscaper might care for a tree because they're paid to keep it looking tidy.
A transaction.
It's a transaction. A keeper cares for the tree because they recognize it as a separate entity with its own right to exist. It's a relationship.
Okay, so it's about the mindset. The sources mention this idea of intergenerational work, that one generation learns the names of the roots and the feel of the soil after rain.
Yeah.
I want to pause on that. Names of the roots. That sounds poetic, but what does it actually mean in practice?
Well, think about your own backyard or a park you visit every day. Most people just see roots, a tangle of wood.
Sure.
But if you live with a sentinel, a massive oak or something, for 30 years, that specific root is the one that trips you if you're not careful. That one is where the water pools after a storm.
Ah, okay.
That root is where the fox hides in the winter.
So it's intimate knowledge. It's specific.
Precisely. It's a specific knowing. You aren't just looking at nature in the abstract. You are engaging with a specific personality. And the material emphasizes that you pass that specific knowing down.
You teach the next generation, this is how this specific tree behaves.
Exactly. It creates this image of cumulative knowledge. The next generation adds their own layer, maybe a new story or a new way of caring. It's described as quiet work.
And quiet is the operative word there. It's not about shouting, look at me saving this tree.
No, it's the quiet work of simply knowing the organism you are living beside.
Let's pivot to that relationship itself. Because the dynamic between the keeper and the sentinel is, it's delightfully one-sided in a way, but also deeply reciprocal.
It's a paradox, for sure.
Totally. So we have the sentinel. It's rooted, enduring, silent. And the material points out a fact that should be obvious, but is kind of humbling. The tree's been there long before the humans walked by.
It establishes a different timeline. The sentinel operates on deep time, geological time almost. Humans operate on, human time. Fast, frantic, usually distracted.
The sentinel just stands as a witness.
It sees everything, but it doesn't speak.
So the humans have to fill that gap. The sources say the keepers are the ones who actually live the relationship.
Yes. The tree provides the presence, but the humans provide the mindfulness. The tree doesn't know it's beautiful, or at least we assume it doesn't care. The human brings the appreciation.
Which brings us back to those sensory details. The material lists very specific things a keeper notices,
It does.
right? Like changes in the bark, or the way the light hits the leaves in different seasons.
Which implies you're standing there at different times of day and different times of year. You aren't just driving past at 60 miles per hour. You're stationary long enough to track the angle of the sun.
And you're noticing stress signs, drought,
Ugh.
disease, storm damage. It says the keepers notice these things and do what they can.
Mm-hmm.
But that phrase, do what they can, feels a bit helpless, doesn't it? If a 300-year-old tree is dying, what can a human really do?
And that's the humility of it. They aren't wizards. They can't magically fix the tree if it's dying of old age. But they offer what support is possible. Maybe they mulch the roots. Maybe they brace a heavy limb.
So it's not about fixing nature.
It's about attending to it.
Here is where it gets really interesting for me, though. The material makes this point that the Sentinel does not need the humans to survive.
It's the harsh truth. The tree survives alone. It has for centuries. If all the humans disappeared tomorrow, the Sentinel would likely be fine.
Maybe even better off.
It might be better off without us parking cars on its roots or carving initials into it. It doesn't need us to admire it.
But the humans need the Sentinel.
Exactly. The need flows in the opposite direction.
Why do you think that is? I mean, really, we have houses, we have air conditioning. Why do we need this silent, indifferent tree?
Because we crave connection to things that last longer than we do. Think about the world right now. Everything is disposable. Phones, fashion, even our digital data rots.
Everything changes so fast.
So fast. And standing next to something that has been there for 300 years, it grounds you. It anchors you in time. The material calls it something bigger than one lifetime.
It also mentions it's a place to sit when life feels heavy. I think we've all felt that. You go to nature, not because the nature needs you, but because you need to feel small for a minute.
Yes, you need to feel held by something sturdy. That's the psychological function of the Sentinel. It offers a backdrop of permanence. And the keepers are the ones who recognize that value.
So we have this relationship. It's deep, it's sensory, it's humble. But humans are temporary. We pop in, we look at the tree, we die.
And the tree keeps going.
Right. So how do you keep this relationship alive across generations? How is this legacy passed down?
This is, for me, the most fascinating part of the research. It explicitly states how this stewardship is not transferred. It says it's not done through books or proclamations.
Which is funny because usually when we want to preserve something, that's exactly what we do. We write a bylaw, we put up a bronze plaque.
We designate a protected area.
Right. We try to legislate respect. But the argument here is that true keeping isn't about the plaque. It's about the practice.
You can't learn to love a landscape from a textbook.
You can't. The material lists the real methods. Hands in the dirt, shared silences.
Shared silences. I want to dig into that. Because as a parent, or just as a human, shared silence is incredibly hard to achieve. We always want to fill the space with explanation.
We do.
Look at that bird. That's a blue jay. It eats seeds.
Exactly. We lecture. But shared silence is a behavior of reverence. Imagine a grandparent sitting on a porch with a grandchild. They aren't talking. They're just watching the rain come in. And the child learns through observation.
The child learns that this place is worthy of quiet attention. That is a lesson no textbook can teach.
It's osmosis.
It is. It's teaching a way of being. The material also mentions teaching a child to listen to the wind through the leaves the same way a grandparent did. That's continuity of sensation. You're teaching them to hear the same song you heard.
And telling stories. The text mentions telling stories of who planted the sapling or who sheltered there during hard times. This transforms the tree from an object into a character in the family history.
And who sheltered there during hard times? That implies the tree was a refuge. And by telling that story, you are telling the next generation, this is a safe place. This is where we go when things get bad.
It's interesting because it makes the stewardship feel less like a chore and more like honoring a family member.
That's the cumulative effect. Each generation adds a layer. The source calls it quiet work again here. It's the accumulation of attention.
So if 5 generations have loved a specific patch of land, that land feels different.
It carries the weight of that affection. It becomes stronger than any single person could create. It's like a braid. One strand is weak, but you weave 5 generations of attention together, and it's unbreakable.
But, and this is the warning in the text, it requires that constant maintenance.
It requires the hands in the dirt. You can't outsource being a keeper. You can't hire someone to have the relationship for you.
Which brings us to the core philosophy here. The text uses a phrase that I think is the intellectual hook of the whole piece: stewardship without ego.
It's the antithesis of modern branding, isn't it?
It really is. In a world of influencers and personal brands, this feels almost alien. Let's break that down. What does the text actually mean by stewardship without ego?
It starts with accepting mortality. And not just accepting it, but embracing the fact that you are a blip on the timeline. The keepers know the Sentinel will outlive them.
It was a hard thing for the modern human ego to accept.
It is. We usually build things, buildings, companies, statues, because we want to be remembered. We want to say, I was here, look at what I did.
We want our name on the bench.
Exactly. But the keeper knows the tree doesn't care who they are. The tree doesn't read the plaque.
So they aren't building monuments to themselves.
No. The source says they are simply making sure the connection doesn't break. They are a link in a chain. And think about the physics of a chain. A single link doesn't stand out. It just holds the tension between the past and the future.
Being a link is, by definition, supportive. You aren't the whole chain.
You're not.
There's a line in notes. They're not trying to own the tree or claim its wisdom as theirs. They're just present with it. That feels radical.
It is radical, just present. In a culture that values ownership, intellectual property, land deeds, mineral rights, the idea of caring for something without claiming it is completely countercultural.
You're caring for it simply because it deserves care.
That's it. It reminds me of the old proverb about planting trees under whose shade you do not expect to sit.
It's exactly that sentiment.
The goal described in the source isn't fame. It's that when the next wave of people arrives, whether it's their own descendants or total strangers, they find a living link.
So the legacy isn't John Smith planted this. The legacy is this tree is still here.
That's it. The legacy is the shade itself. The text says it's holding the memory of the land because someone kept showing up to remember it.
It's beautiful because it's so selfless. The reward is that someone else, someone you might never meet, gets to breathe that air.
It's an act of generosity projected into the future. You are preserving a sanctuary for a stranger.
But let's play devil's advocate for a second. This all sounds very romantic, but in the real world, development happens. Parking lots happen. Is quiet attention enough to save anything?
That's a valid skepticism. Attention alone doesn't stop a chainsaw. But the argument here is that you cannot save what you do not love, and you cannot love what you do not know. Keeping is the prerequisite for action. If a community has no keepers, no one who knows the names of the roots, no one who has shared silence there, then paving it over is easy. Nobody notices until it's gone.
So the keeper is the first line of defense.
The keeper is the immune system of the landscape. They are the ones who notice the first sign of trouble. They are the ones who say, wait, this matters.
That makes sense. It bridges the gap between the poetic and the practical. You need the connection before you can have the conservation.
Exactly.
So as we wrap this up, what does this all mean for us? When we look at this text, the keepers and the Sentinel, what is the big takeaway for someone listening who might live in an apartment in the city, nowhere near an ancient forest?
I think the synthesis here is that we need to rethink our role in the story. We tend to want to be the main character. But in this narrative, the keepers are the supporting cast.
They're the ones who keep the story alive.
By living in relationship with the Sentinel, it's shifting from conqueror to custodian.
Or even just witness.
It's just a witness. It's the power of attention. The text calls it a legacy created by a chain of humans who chose to pay attention. Attention is the rarest resource we have now.
It really is.
To give your attention to something silent, something slow, something that doesn't ping you with notifications, that is a profound act of love.
And the source ends with that thought. The land remembers. As long as people are willing to be mindful, the connection holds.
It suggests that the memory of the land isn't just in the soil, it's in the interaction between the people and the soil. The land remembers us because we remembered it.
So here is the thought I want to leave you with today. We've talked about trees and landscapes, but the Sentinel acts as a metaphor for a lot of things.
It certainly can. It applies to anything that needs long-term stewardship.
Think about your own life. What is the Sentinel that you are currently keeping? Maybe it is a literal tree in your backyard. Maybe it's a community garden, but maybe it's a tradition. Maybe it's a specific gathering you host for your friends every year that holds the group together. Maybe it's a local library.
What is the thing that will outlive you, that you are currently tending to?
Right. What are you showing up for simply to notice it, simply to make sure it's still there for the next person?
Yeah.
What is your quiet legacy of attention?
Because if you stop paying attention, the connection breaks. But if you show up, the story continues.
And that is a story worth keeping alive. Thanks for diving in with us.
A pleasure as always.
See you next time.